Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 263 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is one of the more interesting fish in the aquarium trade, and probably one of the ones that you should not be getting unless you know exactly what you are doing. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is, the Asian Arowana. Now, the Asian Arowana, or scientific name Scleropages formosus. Again, that's Scleropages formosus. It is part of the family Osteoglossidae, which is the family of arowanas, or bony tongues. Now, we've talked about one of the arowanas in the past, long ago, the silver arowana, which is the fish that got me interested in really other fish. It's one of the most vivid memories I have of my childhood is reading a pamphlet from an aquarium, and it talked about the silver arowana. So in a way you could say that fish is related to the fish that got me started on my journey of life. Now, the Asian arowana is native to Southeast Asia. It's rivers, lakes, and swamps in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And each individual region seems to have their own sort of unique color varieties. And if you notice, when you look up the Asian arowana, there's a ton of different colorations. You'll get some that have this kind of brilliant red, some that are lighter orange or golden, and apparently if it's red, it's most likely from Indonesia, and golden arowanas are going to be more from like Malaysia. That was actually fairly neat. I believe this Asian arowana is from Cambodia, and you can see from those colorations why they have a secondary name, the dragonfish. As many people know, Asian culture has a bunch of dragons in there, and the coloration of these scales and how they present themselves tend to be somewhat dragon-like. Very, very, very beautiful fish. In terms of their habitat, they're going to be found in those slower moving, very tannin stained waters, dense vegetation. So oftentimes these are going to be like flooded forests, backwaters, peat swamps especially. They provide adequate cover, and there's a ton of prey in these habitats, and that's what they're doing, because these are going to be more your ambush predators or explosive predators, where they're sitting and waiting and then putting on very short bursts of speeds. If you remember the silver arowana, one of the reasons why it was so fascinating to me as a kid was that it ate actually quite a few bats, which is just a extremely interesting thing that a fish is eating a bat. Now, in terms of size, this fish is good size. I'd say on the higher end of average. They can grow up to about 90 centimeters, which is around 3 feet in length. They have that kind of elongated body shape, an extremely upturned mouth. They have this barbel. Oops. Gotta fix it. There we go. They have these, two barbels, that I believe is more just for helping them find their way around vegetation. They usually have this flatter back, eyes very large and set up high, really, really long pectoral fins. Even here you can see them. They're extremely long, and they're very swooping, very much like wings. As I mentioned, they have very different colorations. They have these monstrous sized scales, very, very large scales, and they're very, very tough scales. But something interesting as well is that you have if you notice these lines down here, we've talked about the lateral line so much, and usually the lateral line is like a bunch of extremely minute and very fine dots. This is actually the lateral line system, and it's very few dots, but they're very large. It's a very, very noticeable lateral line pore system. The scales do get smaller towards the back. They have these very far setback dorsal and anal fins. They're very large, a rounded caudal fin with a thin caudal peduncle. Essentially, this fish is screaming to sit and then just quick bursts. Another North American example would be like the gar. Think of the gar body shape. The fins are set so far back that it provides a ton of propulsion right at the beginning. Coloration, as we've talked about, is extremely variable, but almost always beautiful. This red one is really, really speaking to me. And then this one, of course, I keep being drawn to it as well. Beautiful. I can see why people would want to have these in the aquarium trade. As I mentioned, they are surface predators. They're feeding on insects, smaller fish. Sometimes they'll get birds or reptiles that are like next to the water on a branch near the water, or they've fallen into the water. Just a really, really interesting feeding adaptation, and it means that they can eat pretty much anything. And what they're doing is, yes, they are a sit and wait, but they are kind of patrolling the riverbanks. So they're kind of slowly moving along the riverbanks, getting what they seeing what they can, and if they do see something larger, they will actually leap out of the water. And that's actually one of the things they're known for, and it's why one of the reasons why I really don't like people saying, oh, I have an arowana in their aquarium. They're known to jump very aggressively and far, especially Asian arowanas. They can leap up to 2 meters, which is 6.5 feet out of the water to try and catch prey. So if you do not have an extremely sturdy top to your aquarium, chances are it's going to bust right through, and then you're just going to have an arowana on your floor with a lot of water. So you have to be really, really careful. I should mention that they are also very solitary and territorial. They do not like other arowanas in their deal. So if you do have this in an aquarium, they're probably about the only thing you can have in the aquarium. In terms of their reproduction, it's they do have one of the more, I don't want to say unique, because we've talked about it so many times over the past, but it's still one of the more interesting ones, is that they are actually mouth brooders. So what happens after they spawn, which there's nothing too elaborate about their spawning, the male just collects the fertilized eggs in his mouth and then incubates them until they hatch. So he is protecting the eggs and the young, and the young will actually stay in his mouth for several weeks. This isn't a quick deal, and that's usually because, if I remember correctly, all of the arowanas are actually fairly slow growing fish. So they're not like a immediate adult fish, like it takes time. So the young are actually staying in the male's mouth for several weeks, which is interesting because remember, most of the time mouth brooders do not eat the entire time they're mouth brooding, which goes into how resilient fish can be. If I don't know if this is the case, but if the Asian arowana is not eating the entire time he's mouth brooding, that means he's gone several weeks without food. It's always interesting to learn about the different ways fish have sort of adapted to their life. But for the interesting fact we're going to end the video on, and it's kind of alludes to what I talked about earlier, what they're sometimes called the dragonfish. And it's in a lot of Asian cultures, it's the Asian arowana is thought to bring wealth, power, good fortune, and the coloration plays a big factor in that. And you know, especially I believe the gold version, so this one, which it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but because of the cultural value, the Asian arowana is consistently one of the most expensive aquarium fish in the world. Sometimes the rarer coloration patterns will fetch tens of thousands of dollars, and we've talked about koi being similar, but apparently it's just, you know, the koi going for thousands upon thousands of dollars. That's a rare occurrence. But with the Asian arowana, sometimes, yes, you can find them in the United States for a couple $100, but in Asian culture, apparently it's not uncommon for, it's just almost expected that you're going to be spending minimum like $1,000 US. And if you have a good color one, you're probably looking at tens of thousands, as I said. And when there's something like that going on, chances are there's actually some breeding going on behind the scenes, almost like how horse stables have a you know, they send out their male for stud. I'm betting that there's actually, I don't have any proof of this, but I'm betting that there's actually some people that have their males almost like as a stud fee, meaning for a fee they'll bring their male arowana and try and breed with your female. I have nothing to back that, but usually when you start talking about that, because even in America there's a lot of that going on of, oh, you know, aquarium enthusiasts be like, oh, can I rent your fish? I really like its color pattern, to try and get it to breed with my fish, angelfish, severums, things like that, so that I can get this beautiful coloration into my aquarium. And I know that has happened because it happened with me. So really, really bizarre sort of styles here. Absolutely beautiful fish, extremely interesting, extremely tough, but kind of delves into the mindset of things are worth what people will pay for it, which is always a fun deal. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated regardless. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.